Welcome back. So we are going to turn our attention to the Copa America. So quarter-final results from the weekend. Peru and Paraguay 3-3 went to penalties. Peru won that game. Brazil beat Chile by 1-0. Uruguay, Colombia penalties. Colombia through. And Argentina 3-0 winners against Ecuador. So what it all means is in a few hours' time, Brazil play Peru, and then Tuesday evening / Wednesday morning, Argentina play Colombia. I think that's a 2 a.m. kickoff on Wednesday morning Irish time. So there is a distinct chance we'll have Brazil against Argentina in a Copa America final. Very happy to say Marcela Mora y Araujo is with us. Not from South America. Marcela, you're in London.
I am, yes. I had vaguely hoped at one point that I might still be in Argentina, and the Copa was going to be in Argentina as well. But then both the Copa and my plans were shifted by COVID. So Copa America moved to Brazil, where no one was allowed in. Indeed, after it was announced that the Copa was going to be played there, they got very stringent with their borders, and I came back to my home in London.
Okay. Well, look, football's coming home very soon anyway, so I'm sure you're listening to that round the clock. To bring people up to date, because obviously Euros have dominated in this part of the world, and at best I'd suspect many listeners are just keeping a cursory eye on the results over in South America. Brazil strolled through their group. They won their first 3 games and then drew against Ecuador when they rested most of their players, so 10 points from 12. And Argentina in their group also had 10 points from 12. So both Brazil and Argentina look to be in very decent form here.
Yes, it was a very strange setup, and I think it's worth mentioning or reminding people, because it wasn't a traditional groups where that fizzle out slowly. We just had 2 groups of 5 teams, and so 4 teams were going to go through from each group. So essentially, only 2 teams were eliminated in the very first round, or what we would call the group stages, with just these 2 big groups. But it has to be said, both Brazil and Argentina have seemingly sailed through. And I think it could have gone either way for Argentina the other night. But once the confidence was found, and the players seemed to be enjoying a passing game. I mean, at times it looked a bit risky, perhaps. The traditional worries about Argentina's defence always weighed up very heavily by critics against their seeming offensive flair, which hasn't shone particularly amazingly in recent years. But by the end, I have to say I was really thrilled, and I think most people watching were, because there was something about the playful nature of the game that came through. As the team got more comfortable, even Messi seemed to be smiling a little bit, slightly cheekily, as he took that third, the free kick that turned the third goal. So I guess they're confident at the moment. Of course, the Brazil-Argentina final is the kind of box office sensation we're all rooting for. Fans of Argentina would love Argentina to play every game possible in the tournament. Messi really wants an international title for Argentina or with Argentina. And Brazil are solid, and they're playing at home, which without a crowd may or may not be the home advantage we're used to. But, they've got the motivation there. I wouldn't underestimate Colombia at all. I think they're hungry for it as well. But from the point of view of the organisers and CONMEBOL and the tournament as a whole, which has been so flawed, and remember, this is actually last year's Copa America, already deferred by a year. It was going to be played in Colombia. Then Colombia, it was going to be co-hosted by Colombia and Argentina. Colombia pulled out because of social unrest problems, security issues. Argentina then was deemed unsafe because of COVID. They ended up in Brazil, where social unrest and COVID are completely through the roof. So for them, a Brazil-Argentina final would make the entire enterprise, which has been riddled with issues and unhappy players, people complaining about, the health situation, it would really be a massive payoff for them.
Yeah. You mentioned Messi, who's at a very interesting point in his career. So he scored one and set up those 2 goals in the quarterfinal stages, not 3-0 win against Ecuador. He has 76 goals for Argentina, which is just 1 fewer than Pele's total for Brazil, which is the record for a South American male player. I suspect that is a record both he and Argentina would like to snatch and put in their back pockets. And then I was just reading a piece by your colleague Tim Vickery, and he was saying that Messi really could have been forgiven for throwing in the towel on international football after the shambles that was the 2018 World Cup campaign. Instead, he's gone all in, and that air of aloofness that was around Messi has now been replaced since the beginning, reckons Tim, of the 2019 Copa. He's been different, a vocal, encouraging captain and leader, integrated into the team, both as a human being and as a footballer. Would you agree with that assessment of Messi?
Well, I would agree that he would be forgiven for having quit at any point in the last few years. Many moments which he said he would quit, and he kind of expressed with no uncertain terms that he'd had enough. Slightly reminiscent perhaps of the 2016 Copa America, which had been an organisational shambles, and Messi had been quite outspoken against the Football Association and the powers that be and the organisation and throughout, and then he was visibly unhappy. And then at the end, when they lost the final, he just burst out, "I'm quitting forever," and it was actually kind of world headline news, his resignation. He's been lured back. We're not ever sure quite how much by against his will or by coercion or by what efforts, but since then every appointment of an Argentina manager, and indeed the entire federation, has been through several cycles of presidents and leadership and so on. Since then, the number one priority has been to make Messi happy. And Lionel Scaloni, who's manager at the moment, has also started off, almost accidentally started off as Argentina manager, but always with a mantra: we only have one certain starting player and everyone else is up for grabs, and that's Messi. I do think he seems more comfortable now, but I would say that he seemed more comfortable at the point of taking that free kick rather than since 2019. And I think we've seen a lot of this play out with Barcelona as well. He's a very difficult to read character. I think one is never sure what makes him happy or unhappy. There's this debt, this burden of Argentina, almost like a something round his neck, that like he owes it almost to himself or to the country to win something for them. And you mentioned that record of goals with Pele. I don't think Messi needs a further goal record or golden boot or best player award. I think he's got all the recognition, the granular recognition possible. He just needs to kind of go, "Phew, I did it," to win something big for Argentina. And I feel a bit sorry that that's the case, because I think he's a fantastic player and he's brought joy and repute to the Argentinian game forevermore. But I think sometimes when a result is good, or there's some kind of Instagram images of everyone having a barbecue, or he makes a joke with Aguero that goes viral or something, we tend to read that Messi's finally found his place. And I suspect he's neurodivergent enough that we can't really say that about him. Whatever makes him tick, we don't really know what it is. And it's not clear to me that that's been found completely in Argentina. And I think whereas he once had it with Barcelona, it's also not clear that he's got it there now either at club level. So with his contracts up for grabs and his kind of, just briefly, I remember Seba Veron, who was playing in the 2010 World Cup with Messi and in fact shared a room with him, I think, said the only time he saw Messi truly, truly scared and worried was when he was given the captaincy and he thought he had to speak to the players. Veron said he didn't sleep all night. He was just pacing the room saying, I can't speak to the players. since then, there's always rumours that Messi doesn't speak and therefore he's unhappy, or some people say if he hangs his head low, that means something. We're all trying to decode Messi. And I think whereas he's a little bit more comfortable now in the role of captain, I can't imagine him suddenly leading the group in a particularly new way. I think he is who he is, and that's almost what makes him quite so interesting and unusual, and certainly very different to characters like Maradona and Pele, who are the massive legends of the continent.
God, that's absolutely fascinating story on Varane's part. I mean, I would think you do well to stop Ronaldo talking in a dressing room. Messi, that terrified of speaking, that's absolutely extraordinary. Like, it's not like he was a kid then either necessarily.
No, but I think I've interviewed him once and seen him at presses a few times. He's not comfortable. He's not comfortable with the narrative. And then every now and again, you also see in-depth interviews, or particularly set up things in his home, or where he shows his ball collection or his football shirt memorabilia, and always the interviewers treat him a little bit like he's a child, and there's a strange dynamic there. And John Carlin also once wrote a piece saying, I've interviewed him twice, and if I was offered a third time, I would turn it down because he's such a difficult interlocutor, for want of a better word. But I think there's something quite mesmerizing about that. I don't think we need to say, oh, come on, Messi, learn to speak, be a public speaker. He's such a confident performer of his skill and his talent. Why would we want him to do something else? And I just suspect now that he's clearly okay with the Argentina setup as is at the moment. He's got a couple of players he knows well, he's probably comfortable with. They're doing okay, but as I say, they couldn't really have done much worse. The options were there for everybody to go through, bar some very unlucky team. And so now it's all going to be, the pressure's on, to really go and play proper good football against Colombia, who really want to win this game as well, and who have a lot riding on it, and have the status and the history and the tradition and the players. And that I think we all want to think, oh yes, it's going to happen because Messi is now fine and happy. And we know enough about football to know that we need a whole team to work well as a team. Sometimes a single genius can do a lot, but really we need a whole set of circumstances to be givens. And Argentina has them a priori potentially, but they still have to go out and deliver, and deliver in spite of their weaknesses, which are slightly flimsy defence, slightly chaotic moments, and a predilection for passing, even when it's not necessarily the best thing to do at that moment on the pitch.
Okay, well listen, that sets up the semi-finals beautifully. I think we'd all like to see Messi win a trophy with Argentina. Marcela Mora y Araujo, thanks so much, Marcela.
Thank you, as always.